Your drum recordings are a crime against humanity! Yes, I am talking to you. Fear not, I'm here to save the world from your pathetic Kentucky Fried Chicken bucket drum sound. Learning how to record drums can seem like a Herculean task, especially if you're only a beginner, and it can cost you an arm and a leg. You need drums, cymbals, mics, hardware, an interface with all those inputs, and super high-end preamps, and even higher-end converters. And even after you buy all that stuff, why do your drums still sound like a cat being strangled? Well, you're not going to find the answers over on Gearsluts because you can't buy your way out of this. Stick around and I'll lay it out for you. Here's the 13 reasons why your drums sound terrible. Reason number one, and this is obvious to seemingly everybody but the drummer, that you've got a shitty kit. If your drums sound like garbage, no amount of studio trickery is going to make them sound good. Invest in a decent kit. You don't need to break the bank, but you do need something that sounds good to begin with. Now, I know what you're gonna say, but Glenn, I got this kit for a steal on Craigslist. Yes, there is a reason it was so cheap, genius. You're a drummer. Of course you're a genius. It's probably older than you are and held together with duct tape and crazy glue. And that rusty, warped hardware? Yeah, that's not really helping either. Look, I'm not saying you need to go out and buy a brand new DW Collector Series kit, but it's time to accept reality. At least get something that doesn't sound like a wet cardboard box when you hit it. Check out some mid-range kits from reputable brands. I just got this incredible Mapex Saturn Evolution Series kit from Sweetwater that totally kicks ass, and while it's not exactly cheap, it's not priced into the stratosphere as well. Invest in your drums. They'll last, your ears will thank you, and so will anyone else unfortunate enough to hear you play. If you're using cheap, low-quality mics you got for a steal on Amazon, guess what? You're gonna get a cheap, low-quality sound. I'm not saying you need to buy the most expensive mics out there on the market, but invest in some good quality mics that are designed for drums. Trust me, it does make a gigantic difference. You can't expect to capture a world-class drum sound with mics that were included in a $50 starter pack. Those things are toys. The reality is you need the right tools for the job, so get yourself a set of decent drum mics. There's plenty of options out there that are affordable and will give you a much better result than the ultra cheap shit you find on Amazon. Think Shure SM57 for snare, that's like $100. Onyx D6 for the kick. And Lewitt has some fantastic options for overheads and toms. The Lewitt tom mics are like $99. Get yourself 2 or 3 of those, you're in business. Because your recordings will instantly sound better because you'll have a better source. And then you're gonna spend less time trying to fix things in the mix. Here's a hint, guys. Nothing actually gets fixed in the mix, it's only swept under the rug. Cymbals. Where do I start with this one? This is the part that sucks, guys, especially if you're on a budget, because cheap cymbals sound harsh, washy, and just plain horrible. These usually have the lettering B8 stamped on them, and please avoid them at all costs. Sure, good ones are probably going to cost a lot more money, but they are worth every penny. They add character and depth to your drum sound, and they won't be harsh. Don't skimp here. I can't tell you how many times I've heard recordings ruined by those trash can lids masquerading as cymbals. Let's put it this way. If your cymbals sound like you dropped a pile of scrap metal, it's time for an upgrade. Good ones make all the difference. They have a musical quality that cheap alternatives just can't match. Sure, it's going to cost you more, but think of it like an investment in your sound. Go to a music store, hit a few, listen to the difference. Your wallet might cry a little, but your recordings will sound much better. Let's put it this way. I'd much rather record great cymbals on a cheap kit than cheap ones on an expensive kit. One is going to be much easier to listen to than the other. For what it's worth, I upgraded to a set of Sabians a few years ago and they have never let me down. They're simply awesome. Hey guys, today's episode is brought to you by Soundcore. Now, when they hit me up and said, hey, would you like to check out our new kick-ass Bluetooth speaker? I got one look at it and I said, ooh, hell yeah. Now this has got to be the best Bluetooth speaker you're going to find for under $400, mainly because it has what they call Bass Up 2.0 technology, and it really delivers the goods with enhanced bass response. I like this because it's the kind of thing I can throw in a van with me and hit the road because I can use it for location shooting as a playback device for music videos and demonstrations. And if it gets wet while it's out in the field, no problem, it's waterproof. It's got 2 woofers, 2 tweeters, and the sound quality really blew me away. It's freaking awesome. And what's more, it is freaking loud! I measured the top volume at an average of 110 decibels. So what's the first thing I played on this? MC5's Kick Out the Jams. Seemed appropriate. And that was quickly followed up by Fu Manchu's King of the Road and then Judas Priest's Painkiller. Because if you're gonna test a sound system, why not use the heavy stuff? So do me a favor, leave a comment below and tell me what song you'd play first on a Soundcore Boom 2 Plus and follow the raffle collector link and you'll be entered to win one of 3 of these. Get yours today and kick out your own jams. Let's get back to the show. Now, poor tuning's another big culprit. You can have the best kit and mics in the world, but if your drums aren't tuned, they're still gonna sound like crap. Learning how to tune your drums is essential, and there are tons of tutorials online. In fact, one of the first videos I ever did on the show was on drum tuning. It's boring as hell, so if you're gonna watch it, bring a good book. Look, I get it, drummers are lazy and they don't want to learn, but you wouldn't want to record a guitar out of tune, so why is it acceptable for drums? Right, we're just happy the drummer's mom dropped him off the studio on time. Tuning drums is a lot like learning an instrument in itself. You have to put in the time and the effort. I recommend getting a drum dial and starting with the suggested values. And as you progress, tuning will become second nature. Take the time to understand the tonal qualities of your drums and experiment with different tunings. Properly tuned drums sound fuller, richer, and just plain better. Remember, good tuning can make a mediocre kit sound decent and a great kit sound phenomenal. Don't underestimate the power of proper tuning. If you're taking the time to lay down your music, take the time to get it sounding the best it can be before you even hit the record button. If you're flailing around like an octopus having a seizure, your recordings are gonna sound like that. Rim shots are a staple of rock and metal drumming. They have that crisp, cutting attack that makes the snare pop in a mix. But if your idea of playing rim shots is randomly whacking the snare like a toddler on a sugar rush, then it's no wonder why your recordings sound like a wet fart. Take the time to practice your rim shots. Watch some videos. Get tips from drummers who know what they're doing. I can't believe I said that with a straight face. And work on your technique. I know, practicing technique sounds about as much fun as watching paint dry, but it is worth it. If you want your snare to sound like a cannon instead of a damp sponge, stop hitting it with your purse. And while we're at it, let's address the grip. If you're holding your sticks like you're afraid they're going to bite you, you're not going to get that powerful sound. Hold them like you mean it. Put some muscle into it. You're playing rock and metal for crumb's sakes. You're not tickling the drums for a jazz brunch. Rim shots take precision and control. You can't just randomly bash the snare and hope for the best. You need to hit the head and the rim at the same time to get that signature crack. It's an art, not a fluke. So stop whining and get practicing. Your snare will thank you, and so will everybody you duct tape to a chair and forced to listen to your music. Cymbals. If you're bashing the crap out of them like they owe you money, all you're gonna get is a wash of noise. Balance your playing. Focus on the shells and use the cymbals to accent, not to overwhelm. I've heard so many recordings where the cymbal are just a constant overwhelming presence. It's like listening to sheet metal fall off the back of a truck on repeat. Seriously, it's like being stuck in a tin shack during a hailstorm. Cymbals should complement the drums, not drown them out. But no, you just can't help yourself, can you? Cymbals are the loudest part of the kit, so naturally you think hitting them harder is gonna make you sound better. Spoiler alert, that's gonna suck. It just makes everything sound like a cacophony of metallic garbage. Learn to control your dynamics. Play the cymbals with finesse, not brute force. Let the drums be the main event and use the cymbals to add texture and flavor, not to announce your presence to people 6 blocks over from the studio. And for the love of crom, stop treating your ride cymbal like it's a gong. You're not in a 70s rock band. Unfortunately, you're in a modern metal prog band. which is probably worse. And nobody wants to hear your incessant crashing. Your recordings will sound more balanced and musical if you learn to give cymbals a break. So next time you sit behind your kit, remember, you're a drummer, not a demolition expert. Ease up on the cymbals and let your drums shine. Your ears and everyone else's will thank you. That is until we find out your band plays 12-minute instrumental gent epics, all on the bottom string and only the bottom 4 frets because it's art. If your drums are crammed together like a clown car, you are going to get bleed into your shell mics. Spread things out a bit. Give your drums some room to breathe. It'll help with separation and clarity in the recordings, especially keeping that annoying cymbal wash out of your tom mics, and most importantly, the hi-hat out of your snare mic. If your drum kit looks like it's a jigsaw puzzle, it's too close. When everything is on top of each other, there will be problems at mixdown, and no, those problems won't magically fix themselves. Seriously, give each piece some breathing room. It might be a bit more difficult to reach everything, but hey, this is your chance to show the world you're as awesome as you've been telling everyone. Or at least that's what your mom keeps saying. Remember, you're not assembling IKEA furniture here. The drums need space to resonate properly. When your kit is crammed together, it's like trying to have a conversation in a crowded elevator. Nobody's getting their point across. It's just a mess. So rearrange your kit. Give each drum the respect it deserves. Let your snare, toms, and kick have their own space. Not only will your recordings sound better, but you'll also look like you actually know what the hell you're doing. And maybe, just maybe, people will stop laughing at your setup. That is until your band starts playing. But hey, I do what I can with the advice. If you're trying to record an entire drum set with only 2 mics, you're gonna have a bad time. Seriously, are you trying to record a drum set or a distant thunderstorm? You need enough inputs to capture all the elements on your kit. Get an interface with enough inputs and mic everything properly. Yes, we can do Glyn John's technique with 4 mics, but let's be realistic here. The toms are gonna sound weak and we're not gonna get the cannons that we're aiming for. It's great for vintage tones, but if you want power, you need more mics, period. Interfaces with lots of inputs aren't really all that expensive anymore, and most of them even have their own preamps. And no, you don't need to drop thousands on each channel in your setup. The specs on most modern entry-level preamps are beyond anything we had 30 years ago. The issue isn't your preamps, it's your laziness and not getting enough inputs. It's a necessary investment if you want to record your drums properly. You can't just throw up a couple of mics and hope for the best. Each part of the kit needs to be captured in detail. Look for an interface with at least 8 inputs. This will allow you to mic the kick, snare, toms, overheads, and especially a room mic. In fact, I'd recommend 2 interfaces, an 8-channel and maybe a 4-channel as well. You can use ADAT light pipe to have them work together, or if you bought a real computer, you can set up an aggregate device and run multiple sound interfaces from different manufacturers at the same time. The more detail you can capture, the better starting point you're gonna have at mixdown. And maybe, just maybe, you'll finally stop embarrassing yourself. Or not. If you've got 12 mics on your kit, don't waste one on a cowbell that gets hit once in the entire song. Seriously, we don't need a dedicated mic for your ego! Prioritize your channels, focus on the essential elements. I've seen idiots mic up every single piece of percussion they own, only to use them once in a blue moon. It's a waste of resources. Prioritize the main elements of your kit. Kick, snare, toms, overheads, maybe a hi-hat mic, but probably not because the drummer hits that so hard, there'll be plenty of it in the overheads. Remember guys, we're doing metal and not disco. Now, if you have extra inputs, use those for room mics because that's where the interesting sounds are. But don't sacrifice the quality of your main drum sounds for the sake of an occasional ding or jingle. Nobody's gonna care about your perfectly mic'd up tambourine if your snare sounds like a fucking wet noodle! And you can drop those percussion parts in on another take. So stop trying to mic up your entire percussion arsenal and focus on what actually matters in your recording. Your drums need to sound tight and powerful, not like a junkyard orchestra. Make every channel count. Save the cowbell for when it really matters, which is never. Now, if your drums sound bad to start with, no amount of EQ is going to make them sound good. EQ is not a magic wand. It's not going to turn your soggy cardboard snare into what Lars got on the Black Album. Overusing EQ at mixdown is a rookie mistake. If your drums sound like a wet blanket, no amount of EQ is going to give them life. That's just the reality of the situation. EQ should be used sparingly to enhance and not fix everything that's wrong. Cut problem frequencies, boost when needed, but don't rely on it to save your mix. EQ should be the cherry on top, not the sundae. So before you start twisting those EQ knobs like a maniac, make sure your drums sound good in the room first. A great sound at the source means less work later. And who knows, you might even start enjoying the recording process instead of trying to salvage a disaster. Oh, who am I kidding? You can still have the best sound in the world, but you're still going to be salvaging a disaster because the band didn't fucking practice before they came in the studio. Compression should enhance your sound, not strangle it. Overdoing this is like putting your drums in a straitjacket and expecting them to perform a ballet. It's not going to happen. Overcompression kills the dynamics and makes everything sound flat and lifeless. For verification on that, listen to any major label metal release over the last 20 years. And let's talk about that brick snare. You know, the snare sound that's on so many modern records that's compressed so hard that it sounds like you're hitting a brick. It's impressive in a look what I can ruin sort of way. And when you compress the snare, you also wind up turning up the hi-hat bleed. So now you've got a brick and an annoying hiss to boot. Use compression sparingly. It's there to control the dynamics, not eliminate them. A little bit goes a very long way. Now these days, I don't even compress the snare. I just turn the mics up and compress the entire mix globally. And honestly, I've been getting way better results because of it. Remember, compression is a tool, not a weapon. Just because you have a compressor on every single channel does not mean you actually need to use them. Try turning your faders up first before you do anything else. Too many recordings. What do you mean too many recordings? All recordings these days drop in samples by default. We haven't heard a real drummer on a metal record in 25 years. It's all better recordings of other people who play drums way better than you. And that sucks. If your drums sound so bad that you have to replace every single freaking hit, maybe it's time to rethink the approach. Samples are a last resort, not a crutch for shitty engineering. Good recording techniques will get you a long way. Need evidence? Go put on Judas Priest's British Steel. 0 samples on that record, but it had a gigantic drum sound. So put in the effort and get it right at the source. And stop being lazy and learn how to mic up your kit properly. Using real drums is a guarantee to get a unique sound for your band because everybody else is just playing too chicken shit to do it. Let's face it, relying on samples is like admitting defeat. It's like saying, yeah, I can't actually play this well, so here's a recording of somebody who can. Embrace the challenge of real drumming. Who knows, you might actually impress your audience with your skills, or at least you'll finally stop pretending to be somebody else. If you spend more time editing your drums than recording them, that record is going to suck. Your drums should sound like drums, not like a robot humping a toaster. What the fuck is it with modern metal producers? Do they just hate music? Minor imperfections can add character and make your recordings more interesting. Don't obsess over every single tiny detail. Focus on the big picture and keep it real. The beauty of live drumming is in its imperfections. Those little mistakes and variations are what makes your music unique. If you iron out every wrinkle, you're left with a flat, lifeless sound. And nobody wants to listen to a sterile, soulless track that sounds like it was made by a machine. But boy, do you engineers out there ever love to crank out these shit shingles. It's like you're trying to produce the most lifeless, boring tracks possible. And I say, mission accomplished. Do the world a favor. Step away from the editing software and leave the drums alone! Embrace the human element in your recordings. Let's actually hear the drummer for a change. And stop worrying about what the shitheads on Facebook will say about your music. It's not like they're ever gonna buy your record anyway. Keep this in mind, guys, music is art. It's about emotion, feel, and connection. If you strip all that away in the pursuit of perfection, you're missing the point entirely. So let your drummer's personality shine through. Keep it raw, keep it real, and most importantly, keep it human. There's a very good reason people still listen to Led Zeppelin decades after those records were made, and we can't even remember what your band was named. Great recordings start with great performances. Put in the work, stop making excuses, and stop trying to fuck with every single element, because perfect is boring. That's it for today. Now fuck off. And why do your drum, and even after you buy all that stuff, why do your drums still sound like your wallet might cry? Just not only don't waste one on a cowbell, What's an cowbell?